This episode of St James's Pod is brought to you by Total Supplements. Visit their website totalsupplements.co to discover their range of nutritionist-tested supplements, gummies, shakes and natural extracts. From popular sports supplements like whey protein, creatine, vitamin tablets and powders to mental health supplements such as nootropics and mushrooms, they've got you totally covered. They also have men's health collection offering testosterone support and beauty supplements to keep you looking like your absolute best. I personally use Total Supplements products and I have been using them from before they came on board to sponsor the podcast, so I'm hugely excited to be partnering with a brand that I know and love. So whether you train hard, work hard or take an active interest in your overall health, use our code St James's Pod, that's STJAMESPOD, for 25% off your entire order. The link's in the description. Support the podcast and visit totalsupplements.co now and tell them St James's Pod sent you. And we're back. It's St James's Pod, and we're back to discuss another defeat for Newcastle United.
Not another
away
one.
To Brighton. I don't know what's going on, but down at the Amex is always a tough fixture. And I'm here with Alex, who actually predicted the loss. So, silver lining for him, I guess.
I love it.
You predicted 2-1 though, and it was 3-1. And on paper, not the worst result, but I think in reality, the performance wasn't great. So we'll be going over that, thinking about what we can do better and what actually went wrong in that game. But we're going to start with some club news, some great stuff to go over in the draws for the Champions League. But let's start with the Carabao Cup. We've got Man City at home, first round of the Carabao. Alex, what are you thinking when that gets pulled out the hat?
You had to see it coming from a mile off, didn't you? Like, I think there was 4 teams left in. What, a 33% chance of getting City and out the pop. But to be honest, like, bring it on. Like, I don't mind the draw at all, because either we beat the best team in the competition and we've got a much better chance of winning, or we're out nice and early and focus on other things. So I honestly think, like, it's a no-lose situation anyways. Like, even if we lose the game, it's definitely not the worst thing for other competitions. So not bad.
And you were saying as well, obviously for the fans, it's quite a good one because it's at home and you get to play City, and you're saying like tickets are like £20 rather than the Premier League prices, and you're getting to see the best team in the Prem. But I don't know, when I first saw the draw, I was a bit disappointed because I was thinking we could get some of the new lads, some of the young lads, a bit of game time in the Cups. But then, when I was thinking about it, I don't think Eddie would do that anyway. I feel like he'd just put out the strongest team. So, that's kind of a moot point anyway. So, like you say, if we beat them, it's fantastic. And if we don't, the silver lining is we've got the Champions League to focus on. We've got the Premier League now to focus on a little bit, maybe harder. That we've had a bad start. So, yeah, I think it is kind of like a win-win, as you say. Obviously, there's kind of a bit of controversy because they were meant to put us as whatever number Norwich was. So we should have drew Fulham away in reality. Would you have preferred that fixture? Or are you happy that it was actually mixed up and we get to have a home game instead?
To be honest, as you alluded to, like, I'm in the cup schemes, so I'm getting me ticket for £20 to see City at home. The game at home last season against them was one of the best games I've ever seen. It was a class game, so you're seeing the best players in the world. Pep, like, you rotate a little bit for the cup, but he likes to win everything he goes into, so I could see him picking a pretty strong lineup at St James's Park. So if I can see that City team again, I'm happy with it, to be honest. Fulham away would be a more tricky fixture, and as you're saying about rotation, and I know he did against Sheffield Wednesday in the first round of the FA Cup we entered last season, but that's probably because they were a lower down team. Yeah. And I think if we did end up drawing for them, I think we'd have to go fairly strong and give it a fair shot. So yeah, I'm happy with the draw, to be honest, and whatever happens, happens. And with the draw, like, it's one of those things, like, they've admitted they fucked up, but, like, I don't know. Like, you just gotta laugh, haven't you? Like, getting drawn against City when technically you shouldn't have, if the numbers were the right way around. But C'est la vie.
I wonder what like Eddie was thinking, or like the rest of the staff at the club, when they realised they were the wrong number. Wonder whether they were fuming or not. It'd be interesting to have had the cameras in then. But I was
They
going to
would have
say,
had like trial draws and like everything, like the amount of times they would have had to go through everything and the run up to it, and no one fucking noticed until like Toon fans on Twitter actually realised.
because they don't know the alphabet, I guess.
I'm surprised coming from Toon fans on Twitter as well.
Yeah. When it comes to the Toon, mate, we're all fucking A-level, A-stars.
Switched on.
Yeah, I was going to say with the documentary, you saw, I mean, it wasn't from Eddie himself, but I think it was, was it Darren Eales or someone was like, Eddie's going to want to go hard on all four fronts when they were talking about bringing in the transfers and stuff. So I think that is like a glaring obvious sign that he's not going to put out a real poor side. He's going to put out the strongest team that he can, or at least the team strong enough that he thinks will win the game. And when you say like last season, he put out a slightly weakened team, and he said he thought it was good enough to win, and then it, like in the FA Cup, it didn't. He's probably going to have that in the back of his mind as well, and I think we'll end up just putting out a very, very strong team, especially now that it's City. So I don't think any of I'd say the young lads, I mean, Lewis Hall might have a chance. We just seen him get called up with the England squad. But he's obviously cost 35 million rather than someone like Lewis Miley who's broke through. What did you make to that call up? Because at first I was like, oh yeah, that's great for him, even though he's not been playing, but really he could have done with being with Eddie and the team over the international break to bet him in.
Yeah, it's a proper strange one. I don't understand where Southgate's coming from, considering he hasn't played competitive football all season yet. Granted, he had a very good end to last season, but calling him up to the England squad, you'd think like Rico Lewis or someone like that who's had a cracking start of the season would be further up in the pecking order. And as you're saying, he's going to be training with the England setup, so it's not going to be a terrible thing by any stretch. But those 2 weeks on the international break would have been nice to have him just bedding in, because obviously there's like a lot of fans calling for him to get into the first team now after that Brighton performance, which we will get into. But yeah, just I feel like Eddie Howe likes his players to train a bit before putting them straight in the deep end, and obviously getting to know them, like being a bit familiar with the rest of his teammates and that. So on that front, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. It would have been nice for him to have a full few weeks in Newcastle training sessions.
Yeah, I feel like he really likes to, like, his players to know the Eddie Howe system and their way of playing football. So obviously the more time he has at the club, the more likely he is to get a start. So it's kind of not ideal for Newcastle on selfish reasons, but I guess in the long term it is great for us and for Lewis Hall. Nick Pope, just while we're on with England, didn't get called up. And are you, after that Brighton game, are you kind of seeing why, or do you still think it's a bit strange that, because he dropped out when he had that injury, when he had like surgery on his hand, so he missed one of the England camps, and he's not got back in, which Southgate normally sticks with his favourites.
Yeah.
So
yeah, despite his recent form, I am surprised. Like Sam Johnson, you've got to remember, he wasn't even first team keeper for Palace last season. I think he played less than half the games in the season, and yeah, he started off in goal for them at the start of this campaign. But it as you're saying, with Southgate, you can see him picking Maguire and Phillips and that, all trusty members of the squad that he knows. So Nick Pope, like, in the recent past, he's shown to be England's second keeper over Ramsdale. So the fact that he's dropped out completely, I think it's a bizarre one. And despite the Brighton performance and a few sort of mishaps happening lately, I am surprised. I wouldn't have put money on it at the start of the season that Pope would be missing out. And especially after the start that we've had, like the difficulty of teams, you can't really be expecting a load of clean sheets against teams who all finished in European spots last season. So yeah, it's a tough one. I think I'd be a bit disappointed if I was Pope myself.
Yeah. It's not the best for his confidence either, I don't think.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move on to the Champions League draw. Obviously, I was going to say way more positive. There's a bit of a split opinion on the draw, whether it is a positive or a negative, but I think either way, as a Newcastle United fan, like, you've got to take it as a positive because we're in the Champions League. Like, absolutely, for starters, it's absolutely crazy. But what were your thoughts when you saw the pot we ended up in? Obviously, we were last to be drawn, so as soon as our name got put in the pot, we knew it was PSG, Dortmund, AC Milan. I think I know what you're going to say, but what were your thoughts on the group of death as it's been labelled?
See, like, my thoughts have since changed a little bit, but on the night, I was in the car driving and I was listening to the draw come out and I was like trying to map it in my head of like who was in what group and stuff. So obviously by the time all the pot four teams comes about, I'm like saying like not F, not F, not F. And obviously we pick out the last ever group of death before the change of format. We could, I think, I picked out a group of like the hardest teams that we could have had, and to be honest, it's not too dissimilar to the group who were actually picked out. Milan was definitely the hardest team in pot three, and you could argue with like sort of PSG, Real Madrid, whatever.
Yeah.
In pot one, Dortmund obviously a very difficult side. Like, but yeah, as I was saying, like at first I was like, oh fuck this, like what a joke, like we've got all these hard teams or whatever. But since I'm just like, yeah, bring it on. Like we're there to play amongst the best teams in Europe, and we are going to be playing amongst the best teams in Europe all 6 games in that group stage. So yeah, let's have it. Like, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I was happy with it because even before the draw, I was kind of like, I want at least one big name, like a PSG, where you're gonna get those sort of like Hollywood players coming to St James's, like Mbappe. So I was pleased with that. I did kind of want like maybe one bit easier team so that we could at least like feel like real confident of a win. But at the same time, it's like it's Champions League, so no game's going to be easy. So I think in like looking back at it is a real positive because it's three kind of A-list games where St James is going to be absolutely unreal for all of them, but also away days for the fans. It's going to be amazing. Like you get to go to Milan, to Paris, to Dortmund, and like see that level of football as well. But it's also a nice spread of like different styles of play. So it's a good test for all the lads. And I think as well, what we've seen so far from Eddie's team is like we kind of crumble in the big occasions. We can be like real good for a period, but then we do crumble under the pressure a bit. And I think this is really going to help us with that as well because it's 6 games of real like pressure, real quality teams. So that's just going to be great for the experience of the squad as well. So I think pretty much the ideal draw. And I still feel confident that we can get out of the group because they're not going to be used to our style of football. And I know we've had a bad start in the Premier League, but if we can get back to playing our best and our brand of football, I actually think we can give them all a real good game, especially at St James's. So yeah, it's really exciting. And I'm going to be back in Newcastle for the PSG game, I think.
Wow.
So obviously I'll not be able to get a ticket, but I'll come along with you guys before the game and be soaking up the atmosphere in the Toon. So I'm buzzing with that as well because obviously living over here, it's something that I thought I'd like miss out on, be watching it from the other side of the world. But I get to be like in the city for it. I'm absolutely buzzing with that. So yeah, do you think we've got a good chance of getting out of the group, or are you kind of writing off the latter stages?
I definitely couldn't write what off. Like, the bookies have got were odds on to get out of the group. They've got the
Yeah,
second favourites, which is
mad,
wild.
isn't
I can't remember a team going into pot four who will have been odds on to leave the group, like, ever. Like,
Yeah.
so as you're saying, like, that big game experience, I think it'll be invaluable. Like, win or lose, like, six massive games. And honestly, I cannot wait for it. And yeah, we're away for a wedding for the first game against Milan, so I got a bit lucky there, not missing the first home game in 20 years.
Yeah.
So I was rather pleased about that. Booked me tickets to Dortmund on the day the fixtures came out, so I think there's 11 who are off to Dusseldorf Monday to Wednesday for that game, so I'm absolutely buzzing for that already. So honestly, I just can't wait for it now. Like, absolutely can't wait for like the games to get going. That Milan game, honestly, it's if we can play our best, we could just run them off the park. Like, I know it's like it's different away from home. Like, I'll actually playing at the San Siro. Like, I'm not sure whether like this closed it for renovations, because I remember the semi-final last year. They said that's going to be like the last big derby at the San Siro before, like, I don't know if it's renovated, or I know they can't knock it down because it's like a listed building.
All right.
But I'm just curious where we'll be playing them.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But all I've seen is San Siro, because they were talking about the capacities of these stadiums as well. Like, they're all
Yeah, of course,
huge, which will be, I think, a win for us in terms of the amount of away tickets.
Yeah,
Which is another positive to these games, but also the atmosphere should be unbelievable. But the ticketing situation, obviously, Pete mentioned last night that they still haven't released any info on how you can get the tickets, like the away tickets for the Milan game, which isn't far away now.
no, it's been really poor this season with things like that, especially like the away tickets, because they've had no information, as you're saying, 2 weeks ago today. So yeah, two weeks time today, like, we'll be on the pitch playing them, and it's been poor with the rest of the away tickets as well. I feel like they've been releasing them quite late, and obviously they'll have 24 hours in between the loyalty points dropping, and also people entering the ballot aren't finding out till late as well whether they've got a ticket through the ballot. So all in all, it's leaving people a really short length of time to book accommodation, travel, and get that sorted. Yeah, so like, I know I'm looking to enter the ballot for a few games this season, and it's going to have to be a sort of last minute job, like either drive down, or I don't know. I can't imagine trains will be any reasonable price for 10 days in advance when they know people are going to be travelling down from Newcastle for the football.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not great from the club. They've done a lot of things really well since they took over, but this is one which they really need to sort of get a grip on in a way, because it's going to leave the fans out of pocket. And the fact that, like, 2 weeks time, obviously flights are like ridiculous now. Like, travel to Milan is, I think it's the most expensive out of the three games, and the tickets aren't out. Like, however, they need to step it up, and they just need to just give a bit more notice so fans can know what they're doing.
Yeah, well, we're kind of segue into Brighton with this, because I saw on Twitter, so whether this is true or not, but I saw it from multiple people, that there was quite a few empty seats at Brighton in the away end, which obviously never happens. And everyone was saying it's down to like the new system for away tickets and stuff. And I think one of the accounts I seen complaining was like something like London Mags or something. So obviously supporters down there living couldn't even get tickets, and there's empty seats, which is shocking. Really, like, there should never be any empty seats with the amount of people trying to get tickets, or like the demand for tickets. So I don't know what's gone on there. I don't really know what the process is for getting an away ticket now. I know with you having your season ticket, you might know a little bit more, but
Yeah, so I know Brighton went down to one loyalty point, so you only needed 1 point to be able to buy the away tickets. So I think there's a combination of
Yeah.
train strikes which were on that day. Obviously, from Newcastle to Brighton, an absolute fucking nightmare. So a combination of that, and I wouldn't be surprised if some people bought their ticket just to get the loyalty point and didn't even bother going, which obviously is a problem because you want fans. You don't, as you say, you don't want empty seats. You don't want people losing out. If you've got people in London who are willing to go to the game, the loyalty points should
Yeah.
drop to zero, and they should have a chance, as opposed to leaving the seats empty. Like it's. I think I know I've got friends who have got a lot of loyalty points. That's how I've been to away games in the past. In the same way that same the London Mags, they'll have got tickets from friends. If they aren't season tickets, and it works for some people. But personally, I want to start building up my loyalty points. If I can't get a ticket from my friend's ticket, for the short time, for the short term, then it's something that I'm just willing to take for now. If I can actually start building up points myself, but if people are just buying the tickets and not going to the actual games and not letting someone with like no points or a few points like actually get the tickets and go to the
Yeah.
game, that's not right either. And I know you get the loyalty point. I know a few people on Twitter said otherwise, but if once you buy the ticket, you get the loyalty point on your account. You don't need it to
So
get
they
it
could have
scanned.
transferred it.
So
Still got the points.
that's how. Well, it's more the fact they could have just bought the ticket and literally
Yeah.
not went,
Oh
and
yeah,
they would have
yeah.
got the loyalty point if that's what they were after. However, if they changed it where the tickets
Yeah.
have to be scanned for you to get your loyalty point, then that I think could be a solution, because then it would stop people doing that just to farm
And
loyalty
is
points.
it harder to transfer it now, on the away games as well? Because I know for the home games, because I'll be obviously looking into it for when I come back. I've had to link my dad's supporter ID to my membership and all that, so that I'm able to transfer to him if he wants to go and stuff. Is it as hard with the away tickets? So if say you intended to go, but then the real strikes happened, you've already bought your ticket, you can't get down there for whatever reason. Are you able to put it up on the Facebook group and just give it away if you wanted to, or is that just impossible now? Yeah.
See, I don't think you can do that. Especially with the loyalty points. Like, say if someone's got 100 loyalty points, buys a ticket for Man City, like one of my mates, so he couldn't then transfer his ticket to me because I've got none. So I don't think that would work fairly. So with the home games, it works really well. Like, I couldn't make the Liverpool game, so I transferred mine over to Pete's dad, and it was an absolute doddle to do. Took like 2 minutes, transferred it
You
over,
swerved the gun
then he just downloaded it on his phone. But hi, I missed the Liverpool game last season as well when Pope got sent off, so I just need to stop going to Liverpool. Just
Crafty.
give me a ticket away for each of them. But yeah, I don't think you can. I'm not aware of I don't know anyone who's bought an away ticket yet and unable to go. But I imagine you just sell them back at the club, and then the club would then release them. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
It seems like it's another thing that they haven't quite got right yet. But I guess with change, there's going to be a little bit of ironing out period. So hopefully they'll make some changes to it, and we don't see that again, because it's embarrassing seeing empty seats in your
it is.
Just before we dive fully into the Brighton game, I just remember the Champions League squad got announced. Notable absentees include Kraft, Mankio. Who else did we pick out? Well, you said obviously, yeah.
Gillespie from the first team technically, but when you've got 4 keepers, you're always going to have one miss out, and Eddie obviously fancies Karius over
he's way
Gillespie
better
any day.
You said as well, Anderson doesn't have to be named in the squad, which I didn't realise he was still young enough. Is he still only 21 or something, is he? Or is it under 23?
Yeah, I think it's if you're 21 or under at the start of the season. So you're talking like sort of June, July time this year. So I think you might be. I think it might be a 2022 birthday. Yeah, he's only 20 years old still. Jesus. So yeah, he's a 2002 birthday. So that's sound. He doesn't need to be registered. Miley doesn't need to be registered. Homegrown
So is
talents.
That have to be
we've got a 23-man squad
and under 21. So like we have to put Lewis Hall on because he wasn't homegrown, even though he's under 21. Or is it any player under 21?
I believe from Football Manager, I think there's like a certain quota of 4 homegrown in the UK and 4 homegrown at the club, where you've got the free sort of extra slots, or something like that. I'm sure that's the case. So then we've got Miley and Anderson as homegrown from the club. Obviously Longstaff's too old, but I'm sure that's how it works. It's something to do with that, anyways. But it would make sense considering it's those two who Newcastle have specifically said who are on the B list, who are
that'll be unreal. Though, like for someone like, I'm obviously for Anderson as well, but Lewis Miley, still so young, and he'll get to go away to the Champions League games and stuff. That'll be unbelievable. All right, let's dive into the main portion of this episode. The Brighton game. Let's just start with the selection from Eddie, the starting 11, because the thing I want to pick up on is he said in his press conference that Joe Linton hadn't trained all week at the point of his press conference. Mm-hmm. So even whether he declares himself fit or not, I don't understand why he gets selected, because to me that sends a horrible message to the likes of Longstaff and Anderson, who you have to assume, making an assumption here, but that they trained hard all week, and then Joe Linton comes in, he's been injured, and he just walks straight into that team. Surely that's, like, before we even get into his performance or anything like that, surely that's not great.
That's the thing, like, especially our playing style generally, we're like raring to go, like high energy, cover a lot of ground, press high, press aggressive, and if you're not 100%, I don't know how you could do that. So I agree, it doesn't make a lot of sense with the way we play. Granted, maybe we didn't play like that against Brighton. We sat off a lot more, but the selection's still strange considering Eddie Howe's
comments. I just think for their confidence as well, like someone like Longstaff, who played well last season, arguably he's only lost his place through injury the start of this season, and then Anderson had an amazing pre-season. You'd think he'd be absolutely like chomping at the bit to get game time. So I have to assume that in training he'll be absolutely like gunning for it, especially when Joe Linton's not turning up to training because he's injured. He'd be like, right, this is my week, I'm going to get in training. So either then they're not doing that, which is concerning, or Eddie doesn't trust them, which is concerning, or they're potentially unfit as well. I don't know, carrying slight knocks as well, so it's like maybe they didn't train through the week either. But I'm like scratching my head trying to work out how he's just someone like Eddie Howe. You wouldn't think, like, you'd think he'd be the type of manager to reward someone who trains well all week, gets the nod. But it seems like it's starting to seem like he's got his favourites that he's gonna pick if they're fit come game day, they walk into the team. It's just a little bit concerning for me.
That's the thing, I don't think it's like that deep, as in like the other lads on training as well, they're not like putting it in as hard, because as you said, like Eddie Howe said that Elliot Anderson came into pre-season as the fittest out of all players. So I don't think it's that. I do think it's more the fact that, like, he's got his favourite lineup. He knows Joe Linton on his day can be the best player on the pitch. So I think he's sort of rewarding his faith a little bit, just like trusting him to go and do a job, even if he's not 100%, which clearly from his performance, he's either unable to do physically, or I don't know, his head's just not in it at the moment, because there's a couple in there who really aren't on form. Granted, we've got hard fixtures, but we're still. I feel like we should be giving them a better game than we did on Saturday night.
Well, let's just talk about the fixtures then to start with before we dive into the actual performance. I think first things first. I think we're both kind of on the same page of, as a fan base, we need to just calm down a little bit, because we've had. Yeah, I think everyone's seen that graph of the difficulty level of the opening fixtures, and we're like so much harder than any other team in the league. On paper, it's definitely not the end of the world. We've got 3 points out of the first 4 fixtures, but now we don't have to play them fixtures again this season. So they're out of the way, and we've got much nicer ones coming. And I was just looking at the start of last season. The first 4 games, we beat Forest, we drew away to Brighton, which you were reminding me just before we started, like, we were very lucky to get that draw on that day. We drew against City at home, and then we drew against Wolves away. So that's 5 points from the first opening 4. But I think for me, it's not really so much the points we're on. It's like, I think I said this in the group chat, like, the main thing for me is that Liverpool game is dropping those points. Like, once you're 1-0 up against 10 men, we should be winning that game. So if we'd had those 3 points, like, we'd be sat on 6 points after 4 games, after a really tough fixtures. Everything would be pretty much rosy. But I don't know if you agree with this or not. It's more like the performance levels. Obviously Villa performance really good.
Mm-hmm.
The City performance was good. Obviously really hard team. Couldn't quite play exactly as we wanted to, but put in a good shift. And then the next 2, I mean, there was points against Liverpool that were good. Like, basically until they went down to 10 men, we were good. But this Brighton game, the performance was really below what you've come to expect from Eddie's Mags.
Yeah, well, while I'm dissing Newcastle fans on Twitter for not knowing the alphabet, I'm going to diss you for not being able to add up fucking 6 points from 3 games, from 4 games. Three draws and 1 win is 6 points, not 5. So we'll get that straight out of the way. But second of all, there's been a few poor performances, I think, since that Villa game. I don't think we've covered ourselves in glory in any of the games, and I think it's the same thing on Saturday is the same problem we had in the City game. We give them far too much respect, far too much time on the ball. Let them play their own game, and the toe were apart at times. It was, you could see what was coming that first half as well. Like, obviously the goal is an absolute fucking calamity on so many aspects, but you can't say that they didn't deserve to go 1-0 up after like 25 minutes, because there were bar a few chances in the first 3 minutes that Isaac had were really just barely laid a glove on them, barely touched the ball, and it just wasn't great from our part, and we do need an upward game against Brentford, because they're clearly no mugs. I think they've got the highest or second highest expected goals in the league so far this season after 4 games. So yeah, even though we're talked about our first 4 games being tough, it's not getting much easier straight away.
And like,
anyways,
obviously, I think we can talk about some of the individual performances, but when we're talking about Joe Linton having a bad game, the whole of the midfield doesn't seem to quite be working as a 3 so far. So I don't know if that's part of the reason why Eddie stuck with it, because he just wants more minutes with the 3 together. But What did you make to the Tonali Bruno partnership in specifically the Brighton game?
See, I don't know whether it's a role which is Tonali's a bit unfamiliar with. Sometimes at times he seems like he doesn't really know what he needs to be doing on the pitch. He's quite like when obviously Willock and Joe Linton play on that left hand side and they link really well together. I think Eddie Howe's maybe trying to get Tonali to do the same, say a bit out wide with Miggy, and he's just left in like sort of that half space, like in between midfield and like Miggy, and he's not close to Bruno, so he can't make passes. And yeah, they're just not clicking. I don't know what it is, and I don't know what needs to change because they're just not linking up very well at the moment. And it's like a lot of individuals are put on that pitch.
Yeah.
Even Joe Linton, to be fair, like it's like three individuals in that midfield, not a solid midfield three like we've had for like all of last season, as you said, with the long stuff in there. So I'm not saying Tonali's a downgrade, but it's just taking time for him to bed in, I think. And it doesn't help that Bruno's form has been off for stretching back to last season even. Like I know we said that we thought he was injured back in the last season and the summer off will do him good, but he still doesn't look quite on it. Even after 4 games,
I thought he was better against Brighton.
Form yet.
I don't know if that was just because there was other players playing like worse, so then he looks better, or he actually had a better game. But it seemed like he was doing more of what we used to seeing from Bruno, getting on the ball, he's trying to become available for the ball. And I think with him and Tonali, it is positionally they're not quite getting it yet because I don't know if I don't feel like they're like that similar players. Some people are saying like, oh, we've just bought another Bruno. I don't think that's the case, but I do think positionally they both kind of want to be in the same places at the same time, and they need to just get like the rhythm of each other so that they know when one presses the other one doesn't. Because there was a couple of times you got caught out where the whole of the midfield stepped up and there was just that massive gap between midfield and defence, which totally exposed Dan Burn specifically. And I know he didn't cover himself in glory as well, but I kind of felt like he was being used as a scapegoat a little bit again. We'll talk about his performance in the defence, because obviously we had to shuffle things with Botman being out. And like, I love Dan Burn, but obviously he's not as good as Botman, especially at like centre half.
No, never.
So, what, like with Target coming in and Burn, how much of a downgrade do you think that is to like Botman and Burn? And then, based on that, how well do you think they performed?
Say something I noticed watching that game back earlier today was, I think one of the biggest problems is the fact that Target and Burn aren't great at playing out from the back, so it changes the whole style of play. When you've got Burn at left back and he's not that comfortable on the ball, he gets a lot more time on the ball than he would playing centre half. And then you've got Target in Burn's place on Saturday, who, even though like in the past he's been like a great footballer, a great cross off the ball, he doesn't seem quite confident on the ball as well. So playing out from the back, I know Brighton put under a lot of pressure and the press really high, but we just didn't seem to have that outlet, and there was a lot of just clearances where if it was Botman at the back, Burn left back, we would have tried to play out a bit more. And him and Shaw obviously have a great rapport, and they can play out. So defensively, yeah, Burn he's a bit slow. Like he's more than a bit slow, and on the turn obviously not great. But as you're saying, I don't think that result was down to Burn Target having an especially bad game. I think the whole team had a bad performance from back to front pretty much. And although neither had a great game, I don't think we put it all down to them pretty
when
much.
You say back to front, we were talking about Nick Pope before. He had one of his worst games for Newcastle, I'd say. He was very very unconfident, and I don't know if it was like just after his first kind of mistake, then he just like totally lost confidence. But I felt like the two games previous as well, he was kind of flapping at things. So I don't know if he's like got something going on, but that was a really bad performance on it. Like the first goal especially, just really bad keeping him on it.
Just watching him like on the ball, like it's like he's running in treacle. Like he runs in absolute slow motion, and like even when he like runs to kick the ball, it doesn't look like a natural movement. Like, do you know when you've got like there's a video of like Logan Paul or someone going to kick a football, and you can tell he doesn't kick footballs. He's a really awkward run up to it. It's almost like that. Like he's not comfortable, like just like putting his foot through it. It's not like a natural movement. And in that case, when he comes running out and he's on the byline, don't try and fucking clear it up the pitch. Put it into Rosie. Like, absolutely fucking well it and get back in your goal. It's not a disaster if they have a throw-in like 30 yards out from goal. So granted, he got back in his net by the time the goal went in, but it put Wood under all kinds of pressure, like Trippier sliding and go flying and missing the ball. Like, we were just absolute panic stations from when he made that clearance to when the ball went in the goal. There's no structure, there's no shape. And yeah, it was just an absolute disaster from the moment he made that failed clearance, to be honest. Granted, Gilmore hits it with some fucking fizz, but I don't know. Surely he can do something more than what he done, like just punching it like further away.
I think it was like you say.
I don't know.
In that much panic. Like if he'd been set normal, I reckon he does better with it. But yeah, it was, and like, oh, I don't know. That was just a horrible goal. But it was like you say, a calamity of errors starting from that. I don't know if you do you remember? I can't remember the game it was, but where he put it out and then he like pinched the ball on the side and he picked up a yellow. I don't know if it's in his head that he doesn't have enough time to get back in if they take a quick throw, and that's why he didn't like just smash it out. But he needs to get over that, and because obviously what he did wasn't the answer. So, do you think there's I've seen quite a few people calling for Dubravka to start the next game. Do you think there's any chance of that, or yeah?
Well, I haven't actually seen that. But when Dubravka came in, you can tell he's just a cut below Nick Pope as an all-round keeper. Like, is he that good with his feet that he's gonna be a better person to bring in than Pope? Is he? Pope's conceded the least amount of goals in the league last season. That's such a knee-jerky kind of reaction to have, and I don't see it being the right one.
Like you were saying with Brighton's press, obviously didn't let us play out from the back like we normally would, and especially with Burn and Target being in, Burn in a different position, Target coming in. Do you think that was on Pope's mind, making him a little bit more sort of hyper alert and on edge? Do you think that could have played into his performance at all, or do you not think that would have?
I mean, you always like to have a settled defence, a settled back four, but I can't. You can't say one defender coming out and one player coming in who he's played with plenty of times before should really knock him off like that. I think that'll just be starting to make a few excuses for him, if anything, to be honest. But I think he's just, as you're saying, he's low on confidence at the moment. He's had a few of these moments where it's a bit like, ooh. So, yeah, I just think it's a confidence thing. Like, he's not keeping clean sheets. He's not looking comfortable when he's out of his box. And I don't know what the solution is to that. But I don't think solution is
not at all.
Dropping him at all.
I really doubt Eddie would do that as well. I think it's them. There's them two fans who can't add up. Calling for Dubravka.
Idiots.
I wanted to talk about Isak a bit because I've given him a little bit of stick in the second two games of the season. And I was kind of questioning his press a little bit. And like people have been saying, he's not had a lot of opportunities and stuff. Like we're not been creating anything for him. And I was kind of saying, I don't feel like he's doing too much for himself either. What did you rate to his performance? Because obviously he gets two great opportunities at the start of the game. Maybe they come too early, but with what he's shown in the past, you'd expect him to bag at least one of them.
Yeah, especially like straight off the first whistle, like he gets these two class opportunities, and you expect him to take one. Obviously, Van Heck gets across like class for the second one, and even later on in the half, he manages to sit Lewis Dunk down, and then he pulls it back across, and there's no one fucking there. There's like Gordon at the back post, and there's no one else in the box. But apart from that, I know what you mean about not creating much, because there was times in that match where he's jogging around, but it's at walking pace, and you're thinking like, oh well, like you can be doing a little bit more here. Granted, clearly he was under instruction from Eddie, and so was the whole team, not to press the centre backs really high, not to like go in 100 miles an hour like we can do. So there is like maybe some onus on Eddie Howe there, but I just don't think he done enough off the ball. He's, as you say, and he should have done better with one of them chances early, and he would have probably better to do better. But as we've already mentioned, as a team, we didn't play well. We didn't create a lot. Not gonna lie, we created more against Man City than we did against Brighton. But is it? Do you reckon time to bring Wilson in to start the next game, or is that a bit too much after the difficulty?
I think it's going to be really
fixtures?
interesting to see what he does with it being a break in between. I think it kind of throws things off a little bit. I think maybe if it was this weekend, we might see Wilson start. But did you think it was interesting that he moved to the left and he started getting a bit of joy? He started to look a bit more like the Isak we know, dribbling well. And then he got brought off. It was like almost like as soon as he started to affect the game a bit, they sucked him off.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Obviously, when Norton come in from the left, that assist against Everton last season, he came in from basically the halfway line. Is it as strong as a position? No. I don't think anyways. And also, we've got a whole load of talent on the left anyways, with Gordon, Barnes, etc. But once again, I don't know if it's one of it can't be like a sports science thing, because he didn't do many sprints the full game. Like it's not like he was like sometimes like you'll be like absolutely closing the defenders down, like sprinting down to the keeper all half, and then by 60 minutes he's knackered, and you can tell. So that I did find that a weird one, when he can pull something out of nothing as well. He's like obviously like St. Maximan in the past.
Yeah.
He can just pull something out of his arse. Whereas, say, people off the bench like Barnes, Murphy, I guess they both can influence the game as well positively, and they are able to make chances. But he's special. Like, he's probably one of the most talented players we've got on the team, and in attacking wise, he definitely is. So, maybe giving him an extra 5-10 minutes to see if he could do something, basically.
Yeah, I think
be in the show.
With someone like Barnes, he's more like on the 1-2s and stuff like that, whereas Isak's creating it for himself, and he was already starting to do it. And like what you're saying with the sports science side of things, like people would, I think even I was saying with the Liverpool game, that could have been a reason why he made the subs that everyone was questioning. But even in that game, it's like Liverpool were down to 10 men, so the sports science side of things, like you've got to kind of take it with the game by game basis, where it depends on what they've done in the game as well. You can't just be like, Isak gets 70 minutes, that's all he can do. Where you're like, well, he hasn't had to press this game, so he can probably get 80 out. But I imagine it's more to do with trying to get Barnes on, or trying to just get fresh legs on to affect the game. But it just seemed like an odd one for me. And after the Liverpool game, where we're questioning his substitutions, it did make me question it again. Which, I mean, I've got to say, like, people actually questioning Eddie Howe's position as manager is absolutely nuts. Like, I don't know if there's people, because obviously it's more on social media, but it is on traditional media as well. But I think on traditional media, they purposely get people on who are going to get reactions and stuff. And like, if they interview someone on the street, they'll like ask their opinion before the camera rolls to make sure they get something decent. So I think even then it's like, it is the very small minority that is getting the loudest voice. But it just seems crazy that anyone would even question it, especially this early on in the season after what he's done for us so far. But I do have to question his substitutes and the starting 11. Like I said at the start of the show, like Joe Linton starting for me. Even like he said, he declared himself fit, but whether he had or not, if he hasn't trained all week properly, then I don't think he should be starting. Was there any other players you wanted to pick out? I know Wilson obviously came on and bagged a goal, great finish.
Not particularly from Newcastle, more Brighton. Like, I know we're saying how poorly we played, but Brighton are a fantastic team. Like, from back to front, like Gilmore just ran the show. He's only about 21 years old, and he was fantastic. Obviously, the likes of Mitoma, like I swear, he had about 6 shots in that first half. They were causing all sorts of problems. If João Pedro was a bit more clinical, we could have been 3 down by half time. I think it could have been a lot worse than the scoreline actually was, which it just shows how good Brighton are. Genuinely, like they're a fantastic side. They're gonna finish top 6, and Ferguson's a fucking talent as well. Granted, he got a bit lucky on one of his goals.
I took him out of my fantasy team as well. But so fuck's sake.
Yeah, you can't take. Oh, anyway. I tell you what, De Zerbi roulette's going to be as bad as Pep roulette this season, especially when the European tour starts.
Got, like we were saying in the preview,
so, people will bring him in, and then
talent. Like it is going to be roulette, like you say. Which is why I took him out. And he was in the crowd when you watching. But yeah, that's why I took him out, because he wasn't. I think he started the first game, came on a sub in the next 2, and I was like, well, if he's not going to be starting every week, and then obviously bags a hat-trick. Well, yeah, I think he's 18 still, isn't he?
Yes, do you know that? I don't know if it's UEFA or FIFA's rules, or that if someone plays, I think it's 3 or less games for an international side, they can still change allegiance. He's currently played 3 games for Republic of Ireland, and he's eligible to play for England.
Southgate's been on the phone.
Well, he's pulled out of the latest international squad with an injury, so I do think it's different to like the Declan Rice or the Grealish situation, because they're both clearly English, and Ferguson is Irish born and bred, so I think it would be a pretty shithouse move for him to switch to the English. But I think it would be a pretty nice Harry Kane replacement once he packs his bags, if he was to do that. But I think that's a bit wishful thinking, to be honest.
It'd be interesting to see if he does, though. Any other Brighton players you felt like we should highlight specifically for this game?
Any one of them, like genuinely, Verbruggen, like he's come in and he's the kind of keeper who I think Newcastle should be targeting next. He's so comfortable on the ball. He sprays the balls out the fullbacks constantly.
Him,
he's really impressed us in the first few games, and that's the thing. Like a keeper isn't a position that you thought Brighton needed to like change from last season. They had Steele, who's been playing really well. Sanchez, like he's a very good keeper. Obviously, he's playing for Chelsea now, and then they still were like find this keeper who's absolutely class. Who I didn't know who he was before he came, and he's if you talk about being comfortable on the ball, he's cool as a cucumber. But he's not daft as well though. Like, he doesn't take chances. He's just very good with his feet and very young.
Do you think Ashworth's like... I've seen him sat in the crowd at Brighton, and I think he's kind of like missing the days of the Brighton setup, looking at all the talent they've brought in again this season, thinking that's that helped start all this off, and like it's just unbelievable, like how they seem to pick out these players. Like I think they were saying there's something crazy like 300 million in profit over the last 3 seasons in terms of transfer net spend and stuff. So like,
it's silly. Like, obviously Caicedo and McAllister are both like put the 150 mil between them, but if you think how much they were brought in for, fucking pennies. Like, you're saying with Ashworth, like, I think he'll enjoy the challenge of getting us to. I know it sounds daft because we finish higher than them, but getting us to where Brighton are now in terms of recruitment, like bringing people in. We're constantly bringing in youngsters. We've just signed a lad from Shrewsbury this week, who's meant to be a talented youngster.
Obviously, like the process has been started, but it's so hard. It's like with the sponsorships and stuff. When you're starting from such a poor position, and I think that's one of the things that when we're talking about the fans and stuff that we do need to remember. I know we've got Champions League football now, and this is what I was saying to you lads as well. It's like we're so, because we've got Champions League, like we're so far ahead in the process in terms of like on the pitch. We have Champions League football now, and that is absolutely fantastic for the process of like commercial and everything as well. But we can't just like take those massive steps with the on the pitch stuff, because it doesn't work like that. Like the structure of the finances and the scouting networks and everything like that, we are so far behind that everyone just needs to chill and just enjoy the ride. Like, enjoy the fact we're in the Champions League this season. Don't get caught up in the media hype around us, like Stuart Pearce saying we're going to win the league and shit. Like, just enjoy the ride and get behind the lads. We're gonna play poorly sometimes. We're gonna go away to Brighton and get beat and look like shit. Like, it's gonna happen. We're early days, and this is what I actually wanted to ask you about the transfer window we've had. I don't think we've recorded since they closed, so get your take on the window that we ended up having. But I think my kind of stance on it is that we're trying to build everywhere. We're trying to build a squad. We're trying to build for the future. You've seen Livramento, Lewis Hall come in. These sort of transfers those sort of players don't come around every window. So when they're available, you have to snap them up. And people are complaining that we haven't sort of improved the first 11 as well as we could have done with the same amount of money, considering we've got Champions League football this season. But that has come as a surprise and like so early. You can't just like change the whole plan and just focus on this small part of the club now, Champions League football, because of that. You have to still stick with the process, and I think the window has been great. Like, you can question maybe the Harvey Barnes deal because we had to sell Maxi to get him in, and then we've strengthened the left hand side with a more experienced player when we probably needed it on the right. But apart from that, I think it's been another really successful window.
I couldn't agree more. Like, that's the thing. People are judging them on 4 games so far when none of them are bedded in. Like, Tonali's, like, he's shown what talent he has got. After the Villa game, everyone was absolutely raving about him. But now we've had a few hard games, like they're saying, like, oh, I don't know if he's what we needed, and oh, we needed a defensive mid instead of him. That's absolute shite. We're 4 games in. Like, judge it after half a season, judge it after a season. We've brought these lads in, so young players, as you're saying, for the future. Like, we're going to have these players in like 5 years' time, and they're going to be getting better and better, being coached by Eddie. Like, it's just so, like, as I've said before, knee-jerk reaction. It's just daft. I understand it because in the nature of football these days, people want instant results. But it's a long process. We've got here so early in the project. And Lewis Hall, fantastic signing. I don't know how we've got him. Like, I genuinely don't know how we've got him. Livramento, like, why wouldn't, like, say Man U looking at him? Like, I think he's class. You can tell he's played a lot of games for Southampton, and he's played fantastically since he came into the side. Tonali, class, and as you're saying with Barnes, that sale for Maxi brought in the money to get Barnes and Lewis Hall in. So with FFP, that's why that deal had to happen. It's there's no other two ways about it. That's what Eddie said. Eddie said we'll have to sell to buy. We sold Maxi. We got Barnes in. We got Lewis Hall in. If we can make deals like that going forward, I'll make them 10 times over, because it's going to reap the rewards in the future. Yeah, it might not have by the 5th of September, 4 days after the window's closed, but come on.
That's the thing with the Maxi money is
too.
The fee seems a bit low, but because we got that up front, it obviously helps us to, like you say, get 2 players in that we're doing in installments or whatever to balance the books FFP wise, and then we know the commercial deals like Adidas has obviously just been announced. All this sort of stuff's happening in the background, so come next window we can spend again. And obviously we could have, I was saying all pre-season we could do with a right-sided centre-back, and we could still do with a right-sided centre-back. Shaw picking up an injury in that game is obviously concerning. Botman was out for that game, should be back for the next one, but if he's not, obviously that's concerning. But that's kind of my point with Livermore and stuff. Yes, we technically didn't need him right now for this season because we had right backs. But you see, with the Champions League squad, he obviously doesn't rate Manquillo, perhaps not in the Trippier's old. So when someone like Livramento is available to buy, you have to snap him up because he won't be available next window. So, yeah, I mean, the transformation between Mike Ashley's squad and the squad that we need to be competing on Champions League isn't going to happen in 1 window, 2 window. What have we had now? 4 windows, including the winter ones. So I think the transformation in the squad already has been unbelievable. So, yeah, I think everyone just needs to be more positive and enjoy it. I know it's tough when we put in a bad performance against Brighton. Fair enough, you get beat, but if we'd gone toe to toe with them and played the kind of football that we're more used to seeing, I think everyone would be a bit more positive. But it's so early in the season. We've had the toughest fixtures. The transfer window's been great. We've got Champions League around the corner. We've got City who play in the Cup. Everything on a whole is really positive. So, I think that's the spin we have to kind of go for over this international break. And as you say, Brentford, it's still going to be a tough game, but I think we will see the best Newcastle United come that game. Anything else to pick up on? I wanted to talk about Minte as well. He bagged his first goal as another player.
Oh.
Yeah. Well,
cheeky little finish.
Didn't he? Sent the keeper and the defender for an early nap.
That's the thing. He dropped the shoulder one past the keeper, and he could just put it in the open net. I'm sure they were 4-1 up. So what does he do? He turns past another defender. I'm sure the crowd give it a good old way.
Yeah, just another example of talent
nice
that we brought in and we're nurturing those. So great stuff for the future. And it's a season-long loan he's got, isn't it? I think so. We're not going to be seeing him this season at all. But it's good to see his.
I mean, if we watch some Champions League football,
but it's good to see a player having a successful loan by all the early signs, because they haven't been that successful so far. Anderson aside, obviously. So, I guess we'll be back for the Brentford preview around this time next week after the international break, and we'll also have to preview AC Milan. We'll have to.
What?
Personally, I'm gonna have to check up on the Italian football, but that should be a very interesting show, and we should be joined by Tom again for that one, and potentially some of the other lads. I'm sure they'll be excited to get on and preview those fixtures.
Champions League fixtures.
And then we'll be watching that all together as well, which will be exciting for us. Yeah, so if you've enjoyed the episode,
I'll be doing a live watch along loud.
Yeah, we'll be struggling to watch along ourselves by that point. Yeah, if you've enjoyed the episode, guys, hit the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell. If you're watching or listening to this on a podcast platform, give us a 5-star rating. That'll be great. Help us out. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Wanna hear you go